Peter Parks shoved his wrench deeper into the rusted pipe, water dripping down the back of his neck as his 5-year-old daughter's voice echoed in his head, "Daddy, will we have pancakes again this weekend?" And he wasn't sure what answer he'd give her. He tightened the valve and wiped his hands on his already stained jeans, glancing up at the ceiling of the laundry room. It was a marble-tiled palace compared to the cramped apartments he was used to servicing. This was no ordinary house. The moment he stepped in earlier that morning, guided by the elegant and way too beautiful homeowner, he could tell. The smell alone, fresh gardenia, probably from a real garden, told him this was a different world. He stood up, stretching his sore back. "All right." "Think I've got it," he muttered to himself. "You're fast," her voice came from behind him. Peter turned, startled. She was leaning against the doorframe, arms folded, watching him. She wore a soft cream sweater and jeans that probably cost more than his rent. Her feet were bare, toenails painted a pale pink. She didn't look like a millionaire. She looked like a woman who read too many books and forgot to brush her hair. Casual, effortless, but undeniably expensive. "Pipe's old," Peter said, clearing his throat, "but it's patched up for now." "You'll probably want to get a full replacement soon, though," she nodded slowly. "I figured, thank you, Mr. Parks, Peter, but just Peter's fine." He wiped his hands again, trying not to sound like he noticed the way she was looking at him. "I'm Lenora," she replied. "Lenora Nash," he nodded. "Nice place you've got," she smiled. "Thanks. It was my grandmother's. I guess I'm just the caretaker now." Peter didn't ask what she did for a living. The grand piano in the lounge, the abstract art on the walls, and the way her kitchen had a wine fridge bigger than his entire bedroom back home told him enough. "Do you do everything yourself?" she asked. "Pretty much," he replied, grabbing his toolbox. "It's just me and my daughter. You're a single dad." Her voice softened. He hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, her name's Elodie. She's 5, smart, talks too much, loves pancakes." Lenora smiled with something like admiration. "That's sweet, must be hard." Peter gave a short laugh. "Yeah, well, she's worth it." There was a pause, then she stepped aside as he walked to the front door. "I'll send you the invoice later," he said. "Wait," she said quickly. Do you want some coffee?" He blinked. "Now, it's just, you've been working all morning." "I make a pretty decent cup, and you look like you could use it." Peter glanced at the clock on the wall. Elodie was still at daycare for another hour. His stomach growled before he could answer. Lenora smiled. "I'll take that as a yes." He followed her into the kitchen. It was massive, with marble countertops and gleaming copper pans hanging over the stove. She moved easily, pulling down mugs, grinding coffee beans, and chatting like they were old friends. "So how long have you been doing plumbing?" she asked, pouring the coffee. "Since I was 20. My dad taught me, then I started my own little business, not fancy, just a couple of regular clients, word-of-mouth stuff." She handed him a cup and leaned on the counter across from him. "You're good at it." He raised an eyebrow. "You can tell from one pipe. I can tell from how you talk about it, and how you didn't try to upsell me or scare me into replacing my whole system. That's rare." Peter looked down at his coffee. "Yeah, well, I just fix what's broken." Lenora tilted her head. "You're honest." "I like that." The way she said it made him look up. There was a flicker in her eyes, not flirtation exactly, but interest, warmth, and maybe something else. She was staring at him like she was trying to figure him out. He cleared his throat. "You live here alone," she nodded. "Yeah. Used to live in the city. I inherited this place a year ago, moved in, thought I'd fix it up, maybe sell it. But then I didn't." "Why not?" she shrugged. "It's quiet, peaceful, and it reminds me of her." Peter found himself relaxing. "That's nice. My place is chaos, toys everywhere. Crayons on the walls, half-eaten apples under the couch." Lenora laughed. It was a soft, genuine sound. Sounds like a happy mess. The front doorbell rang and she looked toward the hallway. "That's probably the delivery guy." "Excuse me." Peter sipped his coffee alone for a moment, then glanced around. A sleek tablet was mounted on the wall, displaying security cams. The delivery guy was unloading boxes into the foyer, big boxes marked with designer labels. He squinted. One of them said Paris. Another had a logo he recognized from a luxury furniture showroom he once fixed a toilet in. Each chair in that place cost more than his van. She came back, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Sorry about that." Peter set his cup down slowly. Can I ask you something? She looked up. Sure, you're not just comfortable, are you? She blinked, then gave a quiet laugh. You mean financially? He nodded. Well, yeah, I'm a bit more than comfortable. Peter raised an eyebrow. I started a tech company in college, sold it when I was 29. I don't have to work anymore, I just do things I enjoy now. He blew out a breath. Okay, that explains the wine fridge. She laughed again. The wine fridge is excessive, I know. There was a pause. Then she said, does that bother you? What? That I have money. Peter looked at her, meeting her eyes. No, but I won't lie. It makes me wonder why you're offering coffee to a guy who just unclogged your pipes. Her smile faded a little, replaced by something more sincere. Because you were kind and real, and that's rare around here. Peter's phone buzzed in his pocket. He slipped it out, checking the time. I gotta pick up a loadie. Of course, she said softly. He grabbed his toolbox but hesitated at the door. Hey, she said suddenly. Can I see you again? He blinked. Like for another broken pipe? No, she said. Like for dinner? Peter stared at her. Are you serious? She nodded. I'll cook. He was quiet for a second, then smiled. Yeah. I'd like that. As he walked back to his van, toolbox in hand, he couldn't stop smiling. He didn't know what was crazier, that the leak was fixed, or that the woman behind the marble kitchen and designer boxes wanted dinner with a struggling dad who smelled like copper and WD-40. But maybe, just maybe, something was finally starting to go right. Peter stood in front of the mirror above his kitchen sink, holding Elodie's pink hairbrush in one hand and a clean shirt in the other. The reflection wasn't impressive. His jaw had a bit more stubble than usual, and his shirt, though ironed, still carried the faintest smell of drywall dust that never completely washed out. But it would have to do. He didn't own anything fancier. Elodie sat cross-legged on the couch behind him, her knees tucked under her favorite blanket. Are you going to meet the pretty lady, Daddy? Peter paused, setting the brush down. I'm just going over to help her with something. She said dinner. He turned to her. You were listening, she nodded solemnly. I always listen when you talk to people with shiny floors. He chuckled under his breath. You're staying with Mrs. Barlow tonight, remember? I'll pick you up first thing in the morning. Elodie hugged her stuffed giraffe. Will she make pancakes like you? No one makes pancakes like me, she beamed. That's true. He dropped her off at the neighbor's, double-checking her overnight bag twice before heading out. The drive to Lenora's house was quiet, the city lights giving way to wide streets and old trees. Her place sat like a secret, tall hedges, wide gates, and not a single car parked nearby. Even the air smelled different out here, like pine and rain-soaked stone. She opened the door before he could knock. I was watching for your headlights, she said, stepping aside. Peter stepped in, catching the scent of something roasting meat, herbs, maybe rosemary. She wore a navy blouse tucked into soft gray pants, barefoot again, but tonight her hair was pulled back. Not fancy, just different. You cook too? He asked. I try. Full disclosure, I nearly burned the roast. I forgot timers don't mean anything if you don't hear them. He followed her into the dining room. The table was set for two. No candles, no music. Just a bottle of red wine breathing beside a dish of roasted vegetables and something that looked like it took effort. Peter sat down slowly. I wasn't expecting this. I didn't want to go out tonight, she said, pouring the wine. I thought something quiet would be better. He picked up his glass. Quiet is rare for me, she tilted her head. What's your typical evening like? Usually involves coaxing a 5-year-old to eat anything green, cleaning marker off the fridge, and reading the same book 4 times in a row. She laughed. Sounds exhausting. It is, but it's also my favorite part of the day. There was a pause. Do you get help? She asked, with Elodie. No, not unless you count Mrs. Barlow down the hall. She's 80 and thinks cartoons are a government conspiracy. Lenora smiled into her wine. I like her already. Peter tried the roast. It was good, tender, rich, not overdone despite her earlier confession. He took another bite before speaking. You ever think about kids? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she picked up her fork, twisting it between her fingers. I used to think I'd have them. Back when I thought I'd have a normal life. Peter raised an eyebrow. What changed? I got everything I wanted early, she said quietly. The company, the freedom, the recognition, but it came with things I wasn't ready for: pressure, isolation. People who only wanted what I could give them. Peter leaned back. So you walked away, eventually. But by then, I couldn't tell who liked me for who I was. And who liked the version of me they'd read about in magazines. Peter looked at her differently than not as the woman with the marble kitchen, but as someone who'd built her world from scratch and still somehow ended up alone in it. I don't know what people see when they look at me either, he said after a moment. Sometimes I think they just see someone tired, or broke, or trying too hard. Lenora met his eyes. I saw someone who showed up when I needed help, didn't ask for anything extra, and talked about his kid like she was the sun. Peter swallowed. That's what she is. There was a warmth in the silence that followed, not tension, just stillness, the kind that made you forget to breathe. Lenora stood. Come with me. She led him through the hallway into a room he hadn't seen before. The walls were lined with canvas and paper, some were blank. Others covered in paint-bold colors, strange shapes, half-formed ideas. Peter blinked. You paint? Sometimes, when I can't sleep. Or when I don't know what else to do with my hands. He stepped closer. One canvas was a swirl of deep blue and gold like the ocean under moonlight. Another was just a brushstroke of red across a white background. It didn't make sense, but it felt like it meant something. You ever show these to anyone? Only my grandmother. She said they reminded her of jazz. Peter chuckled. I don't know anything about jazz, but these feel like they're saying something. She folded her arms. What do you think they're saying? I think they're asking if anyone's listening. Lenora turned toward him. And are you? He nodded. Yeah, I hear them. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the faint line of freckles across her collarbone. You don't scare easy, do you? I work with live wires and freezing pipes. I've been bitten by 3 dogs. I've seen a raccoon in a crawl space the size of a shoebox. So no, not really, she smiled. Good. Then she kissed him, not tentative, not polite, just real. Like she'd been holding it in all through dinner, all through the tour, waiting for a moment where it wouldn't feel like a mistake. Peter didn't move at first. Then he kissed her back, slow and careful, like the moment might vanish if he pushed too hard. When they pulled apart, she didn't step away, still not scared. She whispered. He brushed her thumb with his, more like stunned. Is that a yes or a no? It's a tell me what this is. She exhaled, eyes searching his. It's me being honest for the first time in months. Peter nodded, his voice low. Okay. Neither of them moved for a long time. The night outside pressed against the windows, quiet and endless. And for once, Peter didn't feel like he was holding everything together with duct tape and hope. For once, it felt like something might actually hold. The next morning, Peter stood in front of his van, staring at the dented fender like it might offer some answers. He hadn't slept. Not really. Not after the feel of Lenora's lips, the way her breath had caught when she stepped back, the way her eyes had searched his face like she was waiting for him to run. But he hadn't run. He'd gone home, checked on Elodie, and then sat at the edge of his bed for what felt like hours, his thoughts looping in circles he couldn't untangle. Peter tossed his toolbox into the van and climbed in. He had 2 jobs scheduled that day, one in a bakery with a busted sink, and another in a row house where the heater had gone out. Regular work. Predictable. But nothing felt predictable anymore. At the bakery, he kept dropping his wrench. At the row house, he wired the thermostat backward and had to redo the whole thing. By 4 o'clock, he was drained, but instead of heading home, he found himself parked outside Lenora's gate. He hadn't called, hadn't planned to see her. But his hands were on the wheel, and his heart was doing something dumb. The gate opened before he could make up his mind. Slowly, deliberately, like it had been watching him hesitate, he drove in. She met him at the door, wearing a slate gray dress that hit just above her knees and a silver watch that looked like it came in its own velvet box. Her hair was pulled into a low twist at the nape of her neck, and she looked calm, except for her eyes. Those were watching him like she wasn't sure what version of him had come back. I wasn't expecting you, she said, stepping aside. I wasn't sure I was coming. You're here. I am. They stood in the entrance for a beat too long. I made tea, she said finally. Unless you want something stronger. Tea's good. She led him into the sunroom, this time wide windows, tall plants, a pale blue sofa that looked untouched. A tray sat on the glass table, 2 cups, lemon slices, and a small bowl of shortbread cookies. Peter sat down, the cushion giving beneath him like it had never held a single person before. Lenora poured the tea without looking at him. You didn't sleep, neither did you. No, Peter took a sip. It was floral, not the kind he would have chosen, but it settled something inside him. I've been trying to figure out what this is, he said. So have I. He set his cup down. You're not like anyone I've ever met. She gave a soft laugh. I could say the same. You've got this life art on the walls, wine that probably costs more than my van, and then there's me. I live paycheck to paycheck. My boots are falling apart. I've got grease under my nails I can't scrub out no matter how hard I try. Lenora leaned back, folding her arms. Do you think that's what I see when I look at you? I don't know what you see. That's part of the problem. I see someone who doesn't need to pretend, someone solid and rare. Peter looked down. You've probably had a dozen guys with perfect suits and trust funds chasing you. I have, she said simply. And none of them made me feel anything close to what I felt when you talked about your daughter. Peter looked up sharply. I meant that, she added. You talk like your whole world is wrapped around her, and I think that's beautiful. He exhaled slowly. I'm not used to that being called beautiful. You should be. Peter ran a hand through his hair. I don't know how this works, Lenora. You're living in a different orbit. I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow, and you probably have meetings with attorneys who wear $1,000 shoes. I haven't had a meeting in 6 months. I don't want to be someone you're curious about for a little while. She stood, walked to the window, and pressed her palm against the glass. Do you know why I stopped working? He didn't answer. Because I couldn't remember what I liked anymore. Everything I did was filtered through what people expected from me, the right appearances, the right causes, the right men. I was exhausted from pretending to care about things I didn't. Peter said nothing. She turned, her voice quieter. Then you walked in with a wrench and a tired smile and asked if I lived alone, like you actually wanted to know. I did. I know. That's what scared me. Peter crossed the room slowly. You think I'm not scared? I think you hide it better than I do. He stopped in front of her. You said you wanted to be honest, so be honest with me now. She nodded once. I've never brought anyone into this house who didn't come with a contract or an agenda. You're the first person I invited here just because I wanted them here. Peter let that settle between them. I want to see where this goes, she said, even if it's messy. Even if it's hard. I've got a daughter who's my whole life. I don't want to take anything from her. I've got one pair of decent shoes and a savings account that's barely breathing. I'm not asking for your bank statement. Peter stepped closer. I've never done anything like this before. Neither have I. He reached for her hand. What happens now? She laced her fingers through his. You let me meet your daughter, he blinked. Seriously. I don't want to be a secret, and I don't want to be some escape from real life. I want to know the parts of you that matter. Peter swallowed. She's loud and opinionated, and she'll probably ask if you're a princess. I'll take it as a compliment. He gave a low laugh. You might regret this. I've regretted worse. He squeezed her hand. All right. Pancakes at my place tomorrow. You bring the syrup. She smiled, the kind that didn't look practiced. Peter leaned in, pressing his forehead against hers. You're not what I expected. Good, she whispered. Because neither are you. Peter adjusted the collar of Elodie's jacket as she stood on the stoop of Lenora's house, squirming in excitement. Her small hands clutched a lopsided bouquet of wildflowers they'd picked from the park on the walk over, the petals already beginning to droop in her tight grip. Do I say hello or hi? She whispered. You say whatever feels right, Peter replied, knocking once on the heavy front door. The door swung open before his hand had fully dropped. Lenora stood there, dressed in soft ivory linen pants and a wide-necked navy top, her hair tucked behind her ears in a way that made her look different, gentler. Peter thought, but not less elegant. Her gaze flicked to Elodie, and her entire expression softened. These are for you, Elodie said, holding out the drooping bouquet. Lenora crouched down, accepting the flowers with both hands as if they were made of gold thread. They're beautiful. Thank you, Elodie. I picked the purple one. Daddy says purple means fancy. Then I'll put them in the fanciest vase I own, Lenora said, giving Peter a quick glance. Come in, both of you. The house looked entirely different in daylight. The curtains were drawn open, sunlight spilling across the floor in warm ribbons. A small table had been set near the window. already laid with 3 plates, cloth napkins, and a platter of warm, golden pancakes stacked high beside a bowl of strawberries and whipped cream. Elodie gasped. "You make pancakes too?" "I had a little help," Lenora admitted. "Your dad emailed me a recipe." Peter smiled faintly as he helped Elodie into her seat. "She's a tough critic." "I'm ready," Elodie said, gripping her fork like a sword. They ate with easy laughter and syrup-sticky fingers. Lenora listened closely as Elodie recounted a story about a class hamster escaping into a janitor's closet, laughing in the right places, asking thoughtful questions. Peter watched the way she leaned in, how her attention never wavered, how she never spoke over Elodie even when the story veered off into a side plot involving glitter glue and missing shoelaces. After breakfast, Elodie wandered toward the piano in the corner of the room, pressing a few tentative keys. "Do you play?" Lenora asked gently. "No, but I like the sounds." Peter lowered his voice. "She's never seen a real one up close." Lenora rose and sat beside Elodie on the bench. "Want me to show you something simple?" Elodie nodded. Lenora's fingers moved slowly over the keys, playing a melody Peter didn't recognize, soft and wandering. Elodie followed with a single note, then another. Her brow furrowed as she concentrated. "She learns fast," Lenora murmured. "She gets that from her mom," Peter said quietly. Lenora glanced at him but didn't press. The song continued, broken and sweet, later after Elodie had returned to Mrs. Barlow's for a nap, and Peter found himself alone with Lenora in the garden behind the house. The air carried the scent of blooming jasmine and something deeper like old stone warmed by sun. "This is the quietest place I've ever stood," Peter said, running his hand along the back of a wrought iron bench. "I come out here when I need to remember who I am," Lenora replied, sitting beside him. "It's strange, isn't it, how easy it is to forget that?" Peter didn't answer right away. A breeze moved through the trees, shaking loose a flurry of pale petals. "I used to think I had to handle everything alone," he said finally. "That asking for help meant I wasn't doing enough." "So you never ask?" Lenora asked. "I ask Elodie if she wants apples or bananas." Lenora smiled, then turned serious. "Can I ask you something? Anything? Would you ever let someone help, not just with Elodie, with you?" Peter looked at her, something tight in his chest. "What would that even look like? You'd come here when you're tired, not just when you have energy left to offer. You'd let me carry some of your weight instead of pretending it doesn't exist." He sat back, letting her words settle. "You don't owe me anything," she said, softer now. "But I care about you, and I want to be part of your actual life, not just the perfect parts." Peter stared ahead at the garden wall. "I haven't let anyone in like that, not since Elodie was born." "Then maybe it's time." He turned to her. "You sure about this? This isn't just a phase or a project for you." "I don't take risks lightly," she said, "but I'm willing to risk this." Peter laughed once, shaking his head. "I don't even have a suit." "Then I guess I'll have to get used to seeing you in flannel." He looked at her, long and quiet. Then, slowly, he reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. He handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked. "It's a drawing Elodie made last night. She said it's our house, all 3 of us." Lenora unfolded the paper. Crayon lines formed a lopsided house with a crooked roof, a tree beside it, and 3 stick figures standing in front of a tall one with messy hair, a small one holding a giraffe, and a third with a triangle dress and yellow scribbles for hair. Lenora's hands trembled slightly. "She drew me in," Peter nodded. "She said if you were going to make pancakes, you needed to live with us." She looked up, eyes shining. "And what do you say?" He took a breath. "I say I've been scared of needing someone. But I'm more scared of losing this." Lenora stood and stepped closer, her hands slipping into his. "Then don't." A week later, Lenora arrived at Peter's apartment building in a black SUV, one that gleamed like polished obsidian. Elodie clutched a small backpack to her chest as they walked through the front door for the last time. Peter carried a box of essentials, just enough for their first night in the place Lenora had insisted was theirs now, not just hers. The house was waiting, warm and full of light. In the living room, a new upright piano stood where piles of unopened boxes had been the week before. A framed copy of Elodie's drawing had been hung above the fireplace. Peter set the box down and looked at Lenora. You sure you're ready for toys in every room and glitter in places glitter shouldn't be? I'm ready for everything, she said. They stood in the foyer as Elodie darted from room to room, already claiming corners and windowsills as her own. Peter pulled Lenora close. This still doesn't make sense, she smiled against his chest. The best things never do. Outside, the sky deepened into dusk, the house glowing from within, and for the first time in years, Peter didn't feel like he was trying to hold everything together. He felt held, seen. And finally, truly home. The late spring sun filtered lazily through the windows as Peter stepped into the newly finished workshop behind the house, a space Lenora had surprised him with 3 days ago. The room smelled of fresh pine, varnish, and the faint scent of motor oil from the toolbox she had stocked with everything from socket wrenches to precision gauges. He ran his hand along the smooth workbench, still not used to the idea that something like this belonged to him now. You're staring at that like it might vanish, Lenora said from the doorway, holding 2 mugs. I promise it's not a mirage. Peter turned, taking one of the mugs and watching her step inside, her bare feet padding softly across the floor. I've never had a space that was mine. Not like this. I thought you might want somewhere to build things, she said, resting her mug on the counter. Not just fix them. He looked at her over the rim of his cup. You're making it hard for me to believe I ever lived without you. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed, a faint gleam in her eyes. Then don't. Outside, Elodie's voice rang across the yard as she called for the neighbor's dog through the fence. Peter glanced toward the open door, reassured by the sound. She's adjusted fast. She's thriving, Lenora said. Last night she asked if we could hang glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling. I said only if we do constellations properly. Peter chuckled. Sounds like you two are forming an alliance. She's the one who decided we needed a garden. I just ordered the seeds. He took a step closer, setting his mug down beside hers. You know, I spent so long thinking I had to keep my world small, predictable, safe for her. Lenora looked up at him. She doesn't need safe, she needs loved. His hand brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. Funny, that's what I need too. She reached for his hand, pressing it to her chest. Then let's take the next step. Peter's brow lifted. What do you mean? She pulled a folded envelope from her back pocket and held it out. It's not a contract, it's not a prenup, it's something else. He opened it slowly, his eyes scanning the simple letter, then the attached form. She waited, her breath steady, her eyes locked on his. You want to adopt her, he said quietly. If you and Elodie are willing, she replied. I don't want to be someone she remembers as the woman who lived in the big house. I want to be someone she knows is always going to be there. Peter's voice caught. You don't have to prove anything. I'm not trying to prove, I'm trying to belong. He looked at her for a long moment, then folded the paper back and tucked it into his pocket. We'll talk about it together. As a family, her shoulders relaxed. That's all I hoped for. Later that evening, as twilight painted the sky in shades of lavender and gold, Peter stood on the back patio with Elodie balanced on his hip. She was half asleep, her head resting on his shoulder, her fingers tangled in the collar of his shirt. Lenora emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray, 3 bowls of peach cobbler topped with melting vanilla ice cream. She set them down on the table and lifted her eyes to Peter. She's out, he said softly. Then we'll save hers, she replied, taking the seat beside him. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the rustle of wind through the hedges and the distant hoot of an owl settling in for the night. Peter shifted slightly, letting Elodie rest more comfortably against his chest. This, he murmured, is what I didn't know I needed. Lenora reached for his hand under the table and laced their fingers. Love shouldn't feel like a battle, Peter. I've been fighting for so long, I forgot what peace felt like. You don't have to fight anymore. He turned to her. Do you want to get married? She blinked, startled. That's a sudden question. It shouldn't be, he said. I've known for weeks. I just didn't know how to say it. I don't want to keep waiting for the next perfect moment. This is it. This is the life I want. Lenora's lips parted, her eyes softening. Yes, that's it, he teased. She pulled a ring from her pocket, a delicate gold band with a single sapphire stone. I've been waiting for you to ask. Peter laughed, his chest tightening with awe. Of course you have. She slipped the ring onto his finger. Marriage doesn't mean changing who we are, it just means we get to keep becoming who we're meant to be, together. They kissed then, slow and certain, beneath the fading light, with Elodie snoring softly between them. 2 months later, they were married in the garden. The ceremony was small, just neighbors, a few close friends, and Peter's sister, who flew in from Oregon with a suitcase full of hand-cut paper lanterns. Elodie wore a crown of daisies and carried a clipboard with the ceremony schedule she'd created herself. Lenora wore a simple white dress that danced around her ankles with every breeze. Peter wore a navy shirt and his only blazer, the sleeves slightly too short, his heart impossibly full. When they said their vows, Lenora promised to never let him forget that his worth wasn't measured in hours worked or problems solved. Peter promised to always make Saturday pancakes, even the kind with chocolate chips. Elodie gave them both hugs so tight they had to laugh through their tears. That night, after everyone had gone and the lantern still glowed above the hedges, Peter wrapped his arms around Lenora and whispered, "I didn't think a life like this was possible." She looked up at him, her thumb tracing the edge of his jaw. It wasn't. Until we built it. In the quiet, in the warmth of love that asked nothing but gave everything, they stood together, no longer from different worlds but one world shared, chosen, and finally, wholly theirs.